Fantasy Rap
with Austin and Ozzy.
Oh, I just love those boys.
Hey everyone, this is Fantasy Rap, and I'm your host Ozzy.
And I'm your co-host Austin.
You can find us on fantasyrap.com. That is fantasywrap.com. Hey everybody, welcome to the Week 17 follow-up. And our last podcast really of the 2023 fantasy football season.
Yep.
We will probably have something after the playoffs are done. Maybe after the Super Bowl, follow up with how everything went. So first we're going to go over how we did. Did you play at all? You did
I
have
had the
one
one
game.
Just it was that dual week matchup with
Right.
With Caleb, and I ended up losing, which is technically a win because I'm one spot, one draft pick better.
Yep.
However you want to word that.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, other than that, that was
Yeah,
the only one
in
I
Dynasty, if you're not winning, you might as well be losing.
Mm-hmm.
Just my thought on it.
Yeah.
I had two games and happened to win both of them. So 2 championships and a third place finish this year.
Not bad.
Barely made my money back. Just kidding. Did quite well monetarily. So and that includes splitting that one. I just
Oh yeah.
it was $250 for first and $50 for second, and nobody else gets paid. And I sat there thinking to myself, and going into the weekend, into Thursday, it was like 172 to 172 estimated point score, and I was like, $50. You lose 100 by losing a close game.
Yeah.
You don't know who's going to go off because, how many do we play? We've got like 2 running backs, 2 receivers, 2 quarterbacks, a tight end, and then we've got like 4 additional flex spots. So, one guy goes off and he had Breece Hall on Thursday night, so
Nice.
he was out to a nice lead. But he had Jerome Ford on the bench. He had Flacco on the bench. I had Simeon on the bench. But it ended up, I went into, and the funny thing is I went into Sunday night and I was up by 4 points,
Yep.
but it gave him a 25% chance of winning.
Who did he have left?
No one.
No one.
No,
Did you have a defense?
No, we don't have defense, remember?
Oh, that's right.
He had
Yeah.
no one left. Everyone had played. I was up by 4. I had Tyson Chandler playing, and it still gave him like a 25%. And then
4 fumbles and 0 yards.
yeah, and Tyson, as he wasn't meeting his projection, it actually raised his chances of winning. And I'm sitting there going, wow, this is poorly done.
Yeah.
Obviously, when one game is left, or one person has a player left, and no one else does, or the other guy doesn't, he had no chance of.
Yeah.
Yes, it would have taken 2 fumbles. Actually, it would have taken fewer than 2 fumbles, because in our league we have a negative point for a fumble and a negative 2 more points for a fumble lost.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Which I don't know why we have that. It should be -1 and -1. Because if you're penalizing someone for just losing the ball, then don't penalize them with another 2 off for a lost fumble.
Yeah.
So
Might be something to bring up in the off season.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe tweak that.
yeah,
scoring
it's
a
kind of
little
like I want to do in the league that I've been in for so long. As kickers have started kicking more 55-yard plus field goals, we give 10 points
bit. That's crazy.
for a 50. I played against someone who had a kicker who had 2 55-yard plus kicks in the same game.
Yeah.
That's 20 points right there.
Yep.
And I think we have to change that. I think we have to say, we give 7 points at 50. I think we should go 50 to 60 as 7 points. And if they kick a 60-yarder,
Yeah.
and there were a couple 60-yarders this year. So, it's still it's I just think it's kind of silly to sit there and say, well, he kicked a 50-yarder, so or a 55, and we're going to give him an extra, 3 points on each of those.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, we've had, just last week or a week before, there were like 4 kickers in our league that had 20 plus points. But I think we also do yardage, like that.
Well,
So
ours is
it's
kind of yardage.
yes. And
Ours is a
I think
3-pointer.
You get an additional if it is over, however many, I forget, probably 55 or over.
Yeah,
and you
because
get
we
an
do
additional, but-
we do 3 points for anything under 29 yards.
Mm-hmm.
30 to 39 is 4. 40 to 49 is 5. 50 to 54 is 7, and then it jumps to 10.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I
think
just
that's how we used to do it too, but now I think it's just strictly yardage.
yeah maybe
And
maybe
then-
we're
and
gonna
then
have to do that.
1 point per PAT.
Yeah.
So
I want the NFL to institute a new rule, and I don't know if I mentioned it to you. What you do is after a touchdown and the extra point or the 2-point conversion is run on the kickoff, ensuing kickoff. If the kicker can put it between the
you
uprights,
did. I think that was like
you get an extra
6
point.
weeks ago you brought that up.
Get an
yeah.
extra point.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to add a little fun to it, I mean, there are only a couple of kickers that can kick like that.
Yeah, it's true.
And you put it through the uprights, extra point. So it's an extra point.
Yeah.
But it's only after a touchdown. It's not
Okay,
after
after
a
a field goal.
Not after a field goal.
Yeah.
Because then field goals turn into potential 4-point plays every time, and then it's just, I mean, for betting purposes and point spreads and.
Nightmare, yeah.
I mean,
Oh,
here we've got Brandon Aubrey who can kick the snot out of the ball, or Baltimore.
Justin Tucker.
Justin Tucker. Justin Tucker would probably, especially if he gets it after field goals, he'd probably have like 4 of those a game at a minimum. But it would add a new flavor to football. I mean, they changed it to include the 2-point conversion, and they change it to take away kick returns, and you want to make it fun. Go out and find the best kicker. Find a guy. Keep a guy on your bench just for kickoffs that can kick the crap out of the ball.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
players of the year, top players of the year. So I went through 17 weeks. I took a look at the 8 top players from each of the categories, and I also put down their where they were drafted in our league. So for quarterbacks, we had Josh Allen, who had 415.05 points, led everyone in scoring, and he was taken in the second round. Jalen Hurts, 498.25, so about 17 points fewer.
And 398. You said 4.
300,
Yeah.
398.25, sorry. About 17 points fewer than Allen. He was taken in the second round.
Yep.
Lamar Jackson, 372, so another 26 points below, taken in the third. Dak, 362.15, so 10 points fewer, taken in the fifth. We had Purdy, who I drafted, 344.50 points. I got him in the 10th. Jordan Love, who was 339.15 and was taken in the, what does that say, the 9th?
Yep, 9.
We have Patrick Mahomes, who was number 7 on the list at 322 or almost 322.55 or almost 100 points fewer than Josh Allen, who was taken in the first round. And we had Tua, who had scored 317.75 and was taken in the
Looks like the 7th.
7th round.
Yeah.
So big discrepancy. Obviously Mahomes was a very poor first round pick.
Yeah.
Guys like Purdy and Love really turned into great picks.
Yeah.
Tua was a pretty good pick, 7th rounder with what he brought. I mean, even Dak at, nothing wrong with taking Dak in the 5th and still getting that point production.
Yeah, especially with the streak he went on towards the end of the season there of being like the 1 or 2, fantasy quarterback for multiple weeks there
Right.
to really push your team either into just making playoffs or, if the rest of your roster was solid, really push it towards the top of the league. So,
Right.
but yeah, I mean, you had great value for Purdy and, Jordan Love, who Jordan Love over the back half of the season was pretty consistent.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
Yeah, and that's the
PPR, you know, in my league, since the Joe Burrow, you know, getting injured, I was rolling with Jordan Love.
Right. I mean, you look at any of these quarterbacks, like you take a look at Lamar. Lamar, for a while there, I actually benched him.
Yeah, he was bad for a little while.
Yeah. I mean, and I've actually got some week-by-week stats for him. I mean, I benched him in a dynasty Superflex. So you're running two quarterbacks out there, and I didn't have any faith in him because he was scoring like 16, 17, 18 points a week.
Yeah, it was
you want
very
22
few
to
passing
30
yards and like no rushing yards.
Right,
either,
right.
you know.
And all the touchdowns were going to Gus Edwards. So, you know, even though he finished third on the season, a lot of that was, I mean, he scored, 41 or so points this past week. You know, he did have some good games, but it was this.
Yep.
And you looked at Jordan Love over the last 4, 5, 6 weeks, and it was, you know, pretty level.
Yeah.
It wasn't these monster games versus some horrible games.
Yeah.
So, you know, and like we've talked about, I prefer a guy who is going to come in and has less variance. So moving on to running backs. Isaiah Pacheco led the. No, he didn't. In fact, Isaiah Pacheco didn't make the top 8. CMC was number 1 at 326.3 points and was taken number 1 in our league. Mostert was at 242.7. So we are talking 84 points fewer than McCaffrey. In the same, I mean, in fact, I don't think Mostert missed any time. I mean, he may have gotten hurt during the game, but we'll look at that too. I mean, maybe he missed one. He was drafted in the 6th round, number 3 overall. Kyron Williams with 223.10 points was a free agent, was undrafted in my 16-team 2 running back league.
Yeah. Well, we talked about at the beginning of the season they still had Cam Akers, and there was talk from the Rams saying that they're in a good place with Cam Akers at the beginning of the season, and then obviously, what happened,
and I think
started falling apart and then got traded.
But Cam was actually playing well.
Yeah, he was
at the beginning.
Yeah, he was.
But Kyron Williams also played well.
Yeah, Kyron got hurt last year, I believe. Came in and was just slowly getting integrated back in, and then once he was full go, we talked about it I think it was last week, or even week before, that Kyron missed 4 games this season. I think that's in the running back landscape of fantasy, that's like the big story for me, is that he missed 4 games, and in this format, I don't know if PPR, if he would be the number 2 or not, but I don't number know. 3 in this format. So and like I said, I saw a video, some guy with a fantasy podcast was making a way too early.
You got to stop watching everybody else's stuff.
I watch ours, but he was making a video.
It's not working.
Wow. Okay. See you later, guys. See you next year. He made a way too early top 12 picks first round of his league, and number 12 was Kyron Williams, and I thought that was too low. I could see him going 6, 7 even.
Well, in this, who are we missing? We're missing Chubb.
Yes, but I think the injury is going to scare a lot of people because it's the second time on that. But yes.
I don't disagree. Yeah. But what I'm saying is
this year's,
he only played 1 week. Part of the second week. Yeah. So, he's been rehabbing for a full year. You're right. By the time next year comes along, he will have been a full year out from the injury. But, there's, who's missing from this? You talked about Breece Hall. Well, Breece Hall came in at 7. So let's finish off the top 8. So we had Travis Etienne at 218.7, a second round pick. We had Derrick Henry 197.9, a first round pick. So the difference between the 326 and the 197 is 29 points between CMC and Derrick Henry, both first round picks. We had Rashad White go in the 5th round, 194.6. We had Breece Hall go in the 4th round, 191.5. And we had Mixon go in the 1st round, 191.4. Now, the difference between, Henry, White, Hall, and Mixon, almost negligible. I mean, you're talking 6 points, 6.5 points between those 4 guys. But the rounds, 2 in the 1st, 1 in the 4th, 1 in the 5th. Crazy.
Yeah, I think Rashad White will, if they can keep, it sounds like Baker's going to stay. From what I've been hearing, there's mutual interest between Baker and the Bucs to stay. See what they do with Mike Evans. I don't know contractually where like Chris Godwin was at, because he was actually a pretty big disappointment this season too. As a whole, I mean, he had 1 or 2 good games. Then other than
Looked
that,
really good against the Packers.
well, everybody does. So I think Rashad White's going to creep
Not
up.
everybody. The Vikings didn't.
It was one of those magical Joe Barry pulled his head out of his rear end.
He didn't.
know.
I'm not sure he pulled his his head out of his rear end. Everything just seemed to go the right way.
Yeah, I agree.
It must have been a waxing moon on the. Oh no, that was
For the Lions. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think, Breece Hall, probably end of the 1st, creeping up in there.
Yeah.
At the turn,
Yeah.
probably. If somebody wants to stack a receiver with a running back right away at the turn, I could see him there. I could see Rashad White at 2nd if they bring back, Baker and Mike Evans.
But what about a healthy Eckler?
Yeah, I mean,
What about
he'll
Delvin Cook if he was just released, not that it matters because he'll be a free agent next year unless someone signs him to a 2-year deal.
Yeah, I think it depends on the situation, where he goes. I mean, granted, like we said, he's only, a year and a half, 2 years removed from
1 year.
1 year from being,
1,000, four consecutive season 100 or 1,000-yard rusher.
Yeah, and that one's going to be tough with Cook. I mean, Eckler, I could see again, CMC and Eckler 1 and 2 for running backs, just because there's still that gigantic receiving, especially PPR receiving work that Eckler gets. But I mean, just on a
do you see Mostert up near the top again?
He was good and stayed healthy.
He did.
But he's old.
And Achane took a lot of carries and everything from him. And he was still number 2.
Well, he scored it was his I don't know what his yardage was and everything, but I think he was closer to Jamal Williams than not where he only has 500 rushing yards, but he scored 18 touchdowns.
Right.
I know he was over 1,000, but he had a lot of touchdowns.
He did.
That's what boosted it. Mostert, like I said, he's fairly old, and he's been pretty fragile.
And I see Kyron Williams being a top 5 running backs. And like I said, in our format, where there were probably 8 to 10 running backs in the first round.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That 3 of the first round picks made it into the top 8. And I think Taylor was actually right at the beginning of the second round because he was
all that he was injured.
And you knew he was going to miss a little time up front. And you had Eckler in there, and you had Chubb in there, and there were some good running backs that didn't have the years that we expected. But this, and I had, in the other league that I won, that I drafted CMC with the 3rd or 4th pick.
Yeah, I remember you.
And people were like, "Oh, you went that high on a running back?" And I'm like, "That high on a running back? I mean, look at the point difference. You're talking 84 points to the next best running back." And then on top of it, I pick up the free agent Kyron Williams.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I had two of the top three running backs. So, weird.
And then with running backs too, next year you're looking at like Jahmyr Gibbs,
Bijan Robinson.
Bijan, especially if the Falcons finally make a smart move and get rid of Arthur Smith
Right.
in the offseason and maybe
A healthy Aaron Jones.
draft a quarterback
A healthy Aaron Jones.
if he's still in Green Bay. Well,
Yeah.
I guess even anywhere. If you go somewhere where he's the primary,
Right.
I mean, yeah, that
If he stays healthy. I mean,
that's the thing.
there are so many guys out there that can be in the top 10 who either were injured a little bit.
Josh Jacobs. I mean, if he either stays in the Raiders or goes somewhere else after this season, because they got him on the 1 year, I believe, right?
Yep.
He goes somewhere. Who knows?
Yeah, he's still young.
Yeah.
I mean, this was year 5, I believe.
Yeah.
So, moving on to our wide receivers, we've got a close 1 and 2. Tyreek, a first round pick, had 251.6 points, and CeeDee Lamb, a second round pick, had 247.7. So you're talking all of 4 points between the two of them. Impressive. Then you had in the 6th round Mike Evans with 203.3, but that's a 44-point drop off from second to third.
So you get him that late. I think that's about where I had got him in our PPR. It was either the 6th or the 7th. And then right before right at the last day of the trade deadline, traded him for David Montgomery because I needed running back help. But for him to end up at 3 and you're getting him in the 6th,
Yeah.
like I said, I mean, for value, actual pick value, he's one of those top guys, this season for fantasy.
Moving on, we have Amon-Ra St. Brown at 191.5. He also went in the second round.
Yeah.
A.J. Brown, 186.7, second round. DJ Moore, 186.1. I mean, yeah. Third round. Then we come to our first free agent in the wide receivers, and that's Puka Nacua.
Yep.
185.4. And then Debo, third round pick, 182.6. So the difference between 3 and 8 is negligible. I mean, you're talking 20 points over the course of 17 games. I mean, that's barely over a point.
Yeah.
All of them second through third round, except for Mike Evans and Puka.
Yeah.
I mean, Puka is making a name for himself.
Oh, yeah.
I'm guessing probably. I don't think Cooper Kupp is headed anywhere.
I would highly doubt it with his injuries, 2 years back to back.
Right.
That one he was missed time and came back and missed time, and then Puka with that crazy, what was that, like a 3-4 week stretch where he was just
The beginning of the season where he was catching.
it was just ridiculous.
12, 14 catches a week.
Yeah. So, you miss him, like you look at the list and you don't see, Devontae, who's, perennial top 4.
Bad situation.
Yeah, bad situation. Jamar Chase, obviously, with all the
Injured.
issues with Cincy this year.
With
Joe
his
Burrow.
own injuries,
Yep.
Burrow's injuries.
Yep.
Yeah,
So you're seeing some.
And the funny thing is, who was ninth? Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So you went back to back with San Fran players there.
Yeah.
So I mean, Puka is definitely probably a top 6 because I don't see Mike Evans necessarily repeating. I see Tyreek repeating. I see Lamb repeating. Amon-Ra, A.J. Brown. I'm not sure about DJ Moore yet.
Yeah. Depends on what they do through the draft.
Well, and he had a monster week that accounted for the majority of his points.
Yeah.
He scored 186 and he
Played
had
against him
40.
that week.
42 points or something that week.
Yeah,
so
against him that week. I remember that.
yeah. So he didn't do a whole lot other than I was looking through it and I actually we'll get to that, but I wrote down some numbers for some of these guys and he was in the 5-6 range a lot of the times. So moving on to our tight ends, we've got at number 1 with 144.4 points, picked in the 9th round, Sam Laporta. Does that surprise you at all?
No,
I mean, it doesn't surprise
the fact
you.
that he's a rookie, yes, but I mean, just watching him play, and he was involved early. You know, that was kind of the big thing. He wasn't like a lot of some of the rookie tight ends you see that come in the first 8-9 weeks. They're really slow, and they're
Yep.
getting 4 targets a week. 3, 5. They're
The interesting
he was
thing
just
is
involved immediately.
you've got Amon-Ra at 4,
Mm-hmm.
you've got Laporta at 3, and you've got no Goff.
Mhm.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I mean,
he probably wasn't too much
No,
farther down
no,
that
he
list.
wasn't.
So
it was just surprising
yeah.
to see him out of the top 8 with the other guys from the team up there, 2 of the receivers.
Yeah.
It's funny because you remember when they made that trade and they sent Stafford over there and they got Goff and they got lots of picks and everything else. I think they won the. Well, I mean, depending upon how you look at it,
I think it's been pretty fair.
I mean, LA won their Super Bowl,
Yeah.
but Goff is playing extremely well, and with the pieces that they were able to attain in that trade, they're now the NFC champion, NFC North champions. So
Well, that's as the team trading away Stafford and getting all these pieces, you have to nail those picks, or else obviously you lose every time. So
Right.
they've done a very good job. I mean, I'll give the props to the Lions as a Packers fan. It's been a long time since they've had something to be excited about.
Right.
Even the years of prime, Megatron with Stafford. I mean, those two are always super fun to watch, but the rest of the team was horrible.
Right.
So now they finally got a good team, got a good defense, some really good young pieces, obviously in Laporta, and then Hutchinson being in his second year, and Jahmyr Gibbs, and they've done a good job there.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think Laporta's. I mean, he'll be
I think it's
tight end's tough, in drafts because
right.
I mean, you look at all the. I mean, Kelsey obviously, he's the only one in the top 3 rounds, 4 round, or Hawkinson went in the 4th. It looks like in this one, so,
right. And Hawk is the only one. I mean, being injured for what is it, 3 weeks or so
Yeah.
of
Well,
that.
and you look at his situation. You got Kirk Cousins to start the year, and then Kirk is out. For him to still end up as the 4th
Right.
tight end,
Impressive.
is impressive in his own right. So
Moving on, we had Kittle picked in the 5th round, 140.2 points.
that one was Kittle was either you took him
Right.
there or you just completely passed on him in the draft.
Yeah, and Kittle still had the big games and the disappearing acts.
Yes.
So, I mean, I would rather have a Laporta. I would rather have Hawkinson. I would rather almost have Kmet than than a Kittle or some of the other guys. Next, we go on to Kelsey, who was 126.4, picked in the 1st round. We had Hawkinson at 124 points, picked in the 4th round. We had Njoku, picked in the 6th round, 120.2 points. Kmet, picked in the 8th round, 104 points. Your favorite, Taysom Hill, 103.55, picked in the 14th and last round.
a great value, I guess.
It was. And Evan Engram, 102.4, picked in the 6th round. So you've got, so you had the 2 at the top.
Yep.
And then you had 3 in the middle, Kelsey, Hawkinson, and Njoku. And then you had the 3 that came in. I mean, there still was only a 42-point difference between Laporta and Engram.
Yeah, and this was, that was the, going back to Kelsey, just because he's been, the tight end for the last however many seasons. This was not even a risk because he's still the number 3, but you take him in the 1st round, which is where he's been going forever because the value has been there.
Right.
You're winning that tight end matchup. Kelsey would go out and, outscore your opponent's number 1 receiver on week. He's offsetting
or even your running back.
That too, so he's, the value was so great for him there at the positional battle. But, like this year, you take him in the 1st, he still ends up as the 3rd. But, if you hit, like you said, if you hit on Laporta all the way in the 9th or even later because he's, a rookie and, Granted, he was coming in and he was, already billed.
Yeah,
to
and
be
you have
the
to remember
starter,
that
but,
16 teams
yeah,
makes it such that, in a 10, 8 or 10 or 12, you probably wouldn't have seen Laporta necessarily drafted.
Yeah.
And I get that. And people have to realize that this is a 16-team league. So when we say first round, well, first round is still 16 deep.
Yeah.
Much different than the other ones. But
Well, he was in
we
our-
use this for all of our scoring. and
in the PPR draft that Brittany's in, she took Kelsey, one because it's Travis Kelsey, whatever. But
well,
and
I've
it wasn't a bad pick,
taken him
but
in the
I
first
think
round.
She was at either pick 5 or 6.
Yeah, might have been
So
a little early.
but she asked me if she could do it, and I'm like, "It's your team. I mean, if you hit, it's still a great pick,
Right.
You know,
If he's 40 points above, and he's been there, if he's 40 to 60 points better than the next best tight end, you've won.
yeah. It's just now these years, this year and then specifically next year too, I think is going to be where you really are taking a gamble if you're going to take him early like that again.
But it depends. I mean, if they were to trade for a wide receiver, if they were to be able to get a Mike Evans,
Yeah.
or someone else, his value is back up.
I agree because it'll take a lot of heat off of him because I don't know if you saw it. MVS is probably going to be gone. They're going to just
What?
kick him out of there.
No.
Did you watch him drop that one?
No,
It was needed the first down. It was a little behind. He was running towards the sideline. Patrick's back here. It was a little behind, but still hit him right on the ground. And they showed the angle of Kelsey, who was running the mirror route on the other side, turned because he saw Patrick throw it. And as soon as MVS dropped it, he just punched the air, and you could tell he was just upset. So he's gone, and they're gonna. It'll be interesting to see what they do with Tony too, with all of his struggles. I mean, they traded for him, which hurts because that's some capital that you did put into him.
I mean,
Rashee
Rashee
Rice
Rice,
has looked. I mean, he's been their best, receiver.
but he's been their only receiver.
Exactly, but he's
it's
looked,
him and Kelsey.
He's looked good too. He passes the eye test.
Yeah.
which is a big thing.
Yeah. But they need to draft
Oh yeah.
another receiver early, and they need to trade or
for sure.
pick up a free agent.
Yeah.
Or they're just not going to be good.
Yeah, I totally agree.
It's the way it goes. So I put together a little redraft. I redrafted in my 16-team league. I redrafted for myself. And I based it on where these people went. So I was able to get 2 top 8 wide receivers, 3 running backs, 2 quarterbacks, 3 running backs, 3 wide receivers, 2 tight ends, 2 kickers, and 2 defenses, based on where they went, where I picked. So if there was a second round player, I couldn't have him because I picked last in the second round.
Yep.
So I didn't look to, well, obviously I picked last in the second round, so I didn't pick him, so
Yeah.
I didn't get him. So with the first overall pick, I took CMC.
Naturally.
With the second not overall, with my second round pick, which was 32nd, I took Lamar. Third round, I took DJ Moore. Fourth round, I took Mike Evans. So this is completely against the way I draft in my league.
Especially in that league.
Right. I mean, where that there are 16 teams going after 32 running backs, starting running backs, this doesn't happen.
Yep.
Next, in the 5th round, I took Mostert. 6th round, I took Komet. 7th round, crazy me, I took the Browns because I could. 8th round, I took Sam Laporta. 9th round, hey, double down. I'm going to take the Cowboys. Next up, and the Cowboys finished 1 and the Browns 2 statistically for defenses. And I went based on when they were picked. Then I took Purdy at 10th round, where I took him originally.
Yeah.
Then I went with Hopkins, the kicker.
Browns kicker.
Yep, Dustin Hopkins, the Browns kicker, who was actually the second best kicker. Then I took Brandon Aubrey with the 12th round pick, who was the number one kicker. Then I went Kyron Williams, who was a free agent running back. So I took him in the 13th, and I took Puka Nakua in the 14th round at wide receiver. And if you would have looked at me at the beginning of the season, you probably would have gone, yeah, it's a pretty good team. And although I would have gotten laughed at for the Browns and then coming back for the Cowboys, and then drafting two kickers back to back.
Yeah.
But at the end of the year, you would have sat there and said, that's not fair. That's not a fair team. I would put that online and people would say, what are you, in an 8-team league? I mean, this actually resembles a little bit of my 8-team league team that I won the championship in.
Well, at the beginning, if you finish the draft with this lineup, I would look at it and I would go, DJ Moore is going to be up and down.
Yep.
Truly depends on Justin Fields, how he does this season. I was Mike Evans all off season. I was like, if I can get him in later rounds, for sure, I'll take him just because he's, the guy's basically, he's a walking 1,000-yard receiving season wide receiver.
Right.
I mean, and if his touchdowns, spike a little bit, like I said, he can finish third overall with, one of the better value picks in the fantasy draft. So I'd be like, well, receivers, maybe a little light, not a little shaky, just because of the variation of DJ Moore. Like I said, the majority of his points came on 1 week.
Right.
Tight end too. Doubling down on the Bears with Komet. And then Laporta, rookie, who's had some hype. I like that one. Obviously, two defenses. I just I just never would do it, but
I wouldn't either. I only did it.
Hindsight, doing this, you're like, well, yeah, I take them there. I get that outcome there, that outcome,
right?
And then, but the thing that stands out, you look at this roster, you go, you have the 1, 2, and 3 running back on the season.
I do
in this roster, But again, beginning of the season, you go, all right, well, CMC 1 overall, of course.
Yes,
he's probably going to, barring injury, probably going to end up the number 1 running back. Then you look at Mostert, you're like, okay, he's in a good spot, but they brought in this rookie, lightning quick, big playability. You're like, ooh, granted, Achane was, he's a little undersized, and that kind of showed with his durability this season. So you're like, oh, okay, that one might turn out. And then you go, well, Kyron Williams, they still got Cam Akers. Sounds like, Cam's the number 1.
You're throwing,
like I said, without that knowledge, you're looking at it and you're like, you got
it. Right. I took Cam Akers. I took Cam Akers in the 3rd.
Yeah, exactly. And you look at this, with our knowledge now at the end of the season, and you're like, holy shit. This is a monster. Monster.
This is a stupid team. And so I ran some of the numbers. Now, what I did was I did not go back and forth and say, well, this guy had a better week and this guy blah, blah, blah. And this guy, because Lamar, I actually sat out for a while, like I said, in one of my leagues. But taking Lamar as my starter and only filling Purdy in the week that Lamar was on bye, having CMC and Mostert as my running backs and only putting in Williams when I needed him, having Evans and DJ Moore, not Puka, having Evans and DJ Moore as, and here looking at DJ Moore, 2.5, 10.4, 10.4, 19.1, 43, 5.1, 5.4, 5.5, 2.4, 5.9, 15.6, 11.4, 0 on the bye, 5.2, 1.8. So outside of, the 10, the 10, the 19, the 43, and a 15.6 and an 11.4, he was 5 points or below every week, but he was in my lineup. Laporta was my starter. Komet only filled in when he was gone. Aubrey was my starter. Hopkins was, because Aubrey ended up number 1, and Hopkins number 2. And I went with the Cowboys and only filled in the week that they were on bye. And I matched up I went through my scores. Now, understand that in our league, 100 to 110 points is an excellent week. And the highest score, I scored the second highest score of the week in week 1 of the playoffs with 133 points.
Nice.
Or 135 points or whatever. Second highest score of the week.
Yeah.
Here are the points that I would have scored. 108, 179, 149, 126, 150, 121, 90, 134, 109, 69, but I needed another running back because it was Mostert's bye and Williams was still out hurt. 79, 125, 132, 152, 134, and 116. I only ran it out for 15 of the weeks. Of those 15 weeks, the only week I would have lost was the one I scored 69 in. Even the 79 because
Which is a win anyway.
because
you score 69 points.
yeah, but I was doing it based on my schedule because I was redoing my draft, and that's what would have happened.
Yeah.
I would have had a 13-1 team, and I would have won the first round of the playoffs. I probably would have won rounds 2 and 3 too.
Yeah.
I'm just to give you an idea of because people are always the draft makes everything. The draft is the majority of where you end up.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I always look at Bleacher Report and they'll redraft the NBA 2019 team and blah 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 and they'll do it in football too.
Every major sport they
Right.
can, they do it. Yeah, but yeah.
So I wanted to do that, and I wanted to show and it had to be my team because I had the number 1 overall pick. And you take CMC out of this, and it changes it dramatically.
Yeah.
Because CMC is, far and away the most valuable player in fantasy.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even think it's close.
No. I mean, yeah, with the point differential between 1 and 2, I mean, there's truly even if you look at like Tyreek, but then you had CeeDee Lamb,
Yeah, they were pretty much the same.
47.
And you're still only talking, 48 points between 1 and 3.
Yeah.
Here you're talking 100 points between 1 and 3. Yeah. He was 5th in the league in scoring behind only 4 quarterbacks.
Yeah.
I mean, usually you expect your quarterbacks to be the top 10 or so. CMC is a different type of player that if he stays healthy, far and away the best player in fantasy football.
Yeah.
And like I said, 3rd or 4th pick in that one league.
Yeah.
It's
crazy.
I hope and pray for the. I actually considered Nick Chubb in my 30+ year league.
I mean, he had the process.
He wasn't.
I mean it. Yeah,
He hadn't proven himself enough in receiving, though.
Well, that's the thing, but in that 30+ year, that's standard scoring, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, so the process is there. You don't get points for all these receptions that CMC might
You get
get.
yards and TDs.
And that's where Nick Chubb is. That's where his value boost is in the standard scoring format because he doesn't catch passes.
Right.
What was coming out all offseason was the Browns were like, Nick Chubb's our do-it-all. Like, he's going to be our, basically, without them saying it, he's going to be our CMC. He's going to be the guy getting all the carries, all the work, maybe bringing in, it would have been Jerome Ford because he was their backup anyways before they brought in Kareem Hunt, after the injury.
Right.
So, I mean, truly, in a standard. I mean, granted, CMC had the fully healthy year before, but you're still, for me, those 2 years, because I got screwed by him both years, it just still lingers that there's that possibility.
I know.
So, I could have, I wouldn't have faulted you, if you would have won. Obviously, hindsight, you have the injury, but in the draft, you're seeing all this about Nick Chubb, and and he's, as a pure runner, Nick Chubb is probably tied with CMC for the best running back in the league.
Yeah.
But
I am at the point where and CMC is out this week, although they don't need him because they're guaranteed the bye.
Yeah.
But but that injury Yeah, it scares me a little, but it's a minor calf thing. He probably could have played. In fact, I'm sure he would have if they needed him to.
Yeah.
But I sat there and I thought to myself, there's no, you might as well live and die with CMC. I mean, like I said, 3 leagues, won 2 of them. The one I didn't win was this one.
Yeah.
Where I finished in we don't play off for 3rd and 4th, so I finished in a tie for 3rd. I would take him again. I would take him 1. I will take him 1 any time that I am number 1.
Yeah, I agree.
I will take him if he's ever available when I draft.
Yeah.
Because until he shows again that he can't stay healthy, I'm on his side again.
Well, it's just, it's the same with Travis Kelce. He's probably still going to be the number 1 tight end taken, next year. Because you would assume, you got smart head coach and Andy Reid, and obviously there's, a lot of frustration you can see with the Chiefs. You got Mahomes yelling at guys on the sidelines, and Kelce tossing his helmet the other week, and
my auto,
So, there's a lot of, you got a smart head coach and a good front office there in Kansas City. They're gonna, I think they already have some plans of what they're gonna try and do, and in the
and he missed a game or 2.
Yep.
But I'm not taking him in the first round anymore.
No, I'd never have. I just, like I said, it's nice, like I said, those years where you do hit and he, is your number 1 receiver in the tight end slot on your team. I'm sure it's really nice, and that's been, the reasoning behind why he's been in the first round. Me personally, if I can find, like I said, Hawkinson in the 4th is nice. I took Andrews in the 3rd. And barring injury, probably would have finished up, in that top 4, top 5 for sure.
Well, Hawkinson probably would have been. I mean, he would have passed Kelce. Mm-hmm. He may have been. There's 1 or 2
potential. So
I mean, you give him 3 weeks of another 10 points a week. Yeah, he's up there.
Yeah, you take Njoku in the 6th. I mean, Njoku. I mean, in this league in the 6th, he probably went later in a lot of leagues too. He was even on the,
6 is late.
For that league, because he got 16 teams.
Right, correct. That's what I mean.
Yes, but I mean, what I'm saying he was on
10th round.
He was on free agency half the season in our PPR league, Njoku, but that's because he again started out slow and then really came on here in the last 6 weeks or so, 5 weeks. Whatever,
well, and he did poorly with.
Everybody not named Joe Flacco.
Right. I mean,
Deshaun,
So, playing for Deshaun wasn't looking for him. Deshaun was looking to go downfield to Cooper and I mean, the injuries, and they're like I think we talked about in a week in the last few weeks, the number of big injuries that we've had this year to, quarterbacks, to I mean, there's another guy. You talk about a quarterback who would have been easily in the top 8.
Joe Burrow?
No. Top 8 would have been. No. Well, maybe. I mean,
I'd go top 10 probably.
Yeah. No, it was going to be
Burrow was
Kirk Cousins.
Kirk, yeah.
I mean, Kirk Cousins would have been still a top 6 QB. Had he not gotten injured.
Yeah, and I think Burrow would have been too if he would have came in healthy, or they would have. I think even if they would have sat him for the first 2-3 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, a healthy Burrow and and Jamar. I mean, granted, T. Higgins was not good this season because
he was injured early
and stuff. But I mean, I think Burrow probably would have. I think you would have had Mahomes, and even though Jordan Love had a really good season for his first, as a starter. I think, you would have had, Kirk and Joe, and then, in that 9, 10, 11 range would have been the Rodgers, Tua, Mahomes, Jordan Love,
Probably, yes. There, so. Yeah. So, we were talking about the whole Kelce thing. If you knew that Kelce, and you never know, if you knew that Kelce was going to score 60 points more than the next closest tight end, would you take him in the top round?
That all, I mean, again, like we said, fantasy football is so nuanced. It depends on where you're drafting. If he's going to score 60 more than the next tight end, if I'm at anywhere between, say you're in a 12-team league, if I'm anywhere
8 and 12.
yeah, anywhere between even 7 potentially, depending on if you had somebody else you were targeting there and they're already gone. You know, your contingency at 7 might be Kelsey, but yeah, anywhere from 8 to 12. If I knew that's what was going to happen, I mean, I still wouldn't, just because that's not how, like, personally, I just don't like doing that. But I have no problem if somebody did.
I mean, it's kind of like the quarterbacks. You know, it used to be that I would have considered taking Mahomes as the number 1 pick. I didn't this year consider. I mean, not the number 1 pick, the first round.
Yes.
My number 1 pick. I've considered it in the past when you get to the 9, 10, 11, 12 pick in a 16-team league. Didn't consider it at all this year because obviously with 1 and 32, I wasn't getting any of those picks. So, you know, my draft becomes a lot easier because you're going 30 picks before you're going to draft again. But, you know, you look at the difference and, you know, like we said, there's a 100-point difference between, or a 98-point difference between the top quarterback and the 8th quarterback. And there is a 135-point difference between the top running back and the 8th running back. Nowhere else do you see that thing. You know, the 69 points between wide receivers and only 42 between tight ends. That tells me that as the tight ends get closer and closer in value, you don't draft a tight end until the 10th round.
Tight ends now too. Some of the younger guys, like obviously Laporta, you know, Hawkinson. You know, I mean, he's been around for a little bit.
Well, even a Tucker Kraft.
Yeah, you get some of these guys. You know, you get like potential Laporta for next year, depending if he goes somewhere. Would be Brock Bowers from Georgia.
Yeah.
You know, you got new guys coming in, younger crop of tight ends coming in, who are more in the mold of a Kelsey Kittle kind of. You know, that, you know, better receiving, you know, more hybrid, tight end. So it could make where, I mean, you know, in the past, like tight end and like, you know, when I first started and up until probably about 4 years ago, I would just punt tight end position in drafts, and I would try and find Stafford in the 8th, Kirk, you know, 7th, 8th. You know, I try and find
Purdy in the 10th.
Exactly. I try and find somebody there who could be consistent, but have spikes. But you know, like some of these, you know, some of the quarterbacks in that spot, like a Trevor Lawrence, even. I mean, he was going in like the 6th round. You know, Justin Herbert. But you know, I mean, that's missing on this list too. Herbert. Yeah. You know, that one. You know.
So Purdy was actually the 160th pick because he was the last pick in the 10th round.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably more players taken than you guys even take. I mean, in a 10-team league, that's 16 people.
Yeah, or 12. Yeah, 12-team league, and I forget how many rounds we do. 15.
Yeah. So I mean, right at the end of the draft. Is where Purdy would go in your draft.
That's how I used to draft, was just punt tight end, because you could find somebody like a Komet or whoever.
Look at think of where Trey McBride would be if he actually had played the whole season. Who was the other one I was thinking of?
Greg Dulcich from
Greg Dulcich.
Denver, if they would thin out that ridiculous. Granted, there's a lot of injuries, but Denver has a ridiculously deep tight end room. They've got like 6 tight ends for no reason.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of who the other one was. There was another guy that wrong situation or just didn't. Dalton Kincaid. You know, for the first while, because it was Dawson Knox seeing most of it, and then Dalton Kincaid came on, and then Dawson Knox came back, and Dalton Kincaid fell down again, and you know, it's one of those. That's an interesting position where, you know, I see these top 8, and I know of 4 or 5 or 6 other guys who could easily be,
Yeah.
which is why, I'm back to, I don't like drafting tight ends until late.
Yeah.
Dalton
Well, you
Kincaid
look at-
was probably the 12th round pick for me.
Well, you look at, somebody who was going in the 4th, probably around Hawkinson, and Kittle was Darren Waller,
Yeah.
who, goes into what looked like was going to be a good situation, because in all offseason and preseason, apparently the
But then you
reports
lose
were
your starting quarterback.
Daniel Jones they'd have to take Darren Waller out to make Daniel Jones throw to somebody else.
Right.
And, he flew up draft boards, and, he got taken. Like I said, he was around Hawkinson and Kittle in that 4th, 5th round. Daniel Jones goes down. I think Waller got hurt before Daniel Jones. Waller missed a good chunk of the season. And then comes
Daniel
back
Jones
to a
was
horrible
gone.
quarterback situation, and on a horrible team. A
With
bad
no
team.
offensive line.
Exactly. So, you get stuff like that. I mean, like I said, fantasy's so nuanced that, in the moment, you're like, this is the best pick for me
Right.
in this round at this position. And then 2 weeks in, i.e. a Nick Chubb, one bad injury, and now you're down your first or second, pick in your draft.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I mean, it happened to me with Cam Akers, first pick in the 3rd round.
Mm-hmm.
And, I thought he was going to be the starter there, and boom,
I lost
disappears.
3rd and 5th between Mark Andrews and Joe Burrow, and a couple other pieces in my league this year. So
Yeah, I mean, it's like one of the guys in our league, and he made it to the Super Bowl but lost, or the championship and lost, was a guy who always says, well, it's just luck. It's not just, I mean,
it plays into it. Yes.
a lot of it, yes, a lot of it is. And, you can't control who gets hurt, etc. Which is why I love the dynasty, because the benches are deep enough and you don't have to redraft every year and take the chance that guys are getting hurt.
Yeah.
You want to make a trade, make a trade. You've got draft picks for the rookies that are coming out. You've got free agents. You've got so much going on. I was reading someone had posted something in one of the Facebook fantasy groups that I'm in, and they're playing in week 18. And all it was, the guy was like, well, what do I do? We got to play week 18, blah, blah, blah. And everyone was like, well, get out of that league.
Yeah,
well, why would I get out of the league? It shows more from a guy as a general manager that has to wade through the waiver wire and make pick up players knowing who's going to be out and everything. I'm like, there is no way that I would ever consider not being able to play CMC, Purdy, the guys that I had get me to the championship, only to lose because most of my good players are on bye, and you've got guys that are on not so great teams, but they're good players, so you're going to win.
Yeah.
What is what sense is there in that?
Teams resting their starters because they've already clinched playoffs.
Right.
Or,
you mean to tell me Lamar is going to be the starter?
Yeah.
This week?
Yeah.
You mean to tell me that Purdy and CMC and Debo and they're not going to play? Yeah. They're going to rest they've got 2 weeks of rest. And for someone to say, well, it's you show yourself as a better GM doing that. No, you don't. It's just it's asinine to me that someone would play a week 18.
Yeah, your team could go from potentially the best team in the league to
I could have the top scoring team in the league, and I mean in this redraft case, I'd have no quarterback. I'd have one running back. I don't even know if I'd have a second. I don't know if Mostert would even play.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because I don't know if they are playing. It just depends on who's playing for what and everything, and it's just
crazy.
If you're counting on that to make you win a championship, count me out every single time.
I'll take second. Give me my money back.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm not even getting into a league like that. So. That's all we've got. The year is over. We, like I said, we'll probably have, one after the Super Bowl, and we'll do some talking about dynasty,
Yep.
and
around draft time or after the draft. And,
yeah.
Yeah.
And we'll probably, we may talk about strategies, et cetera, again, come up with some new ideas to get you, winning in your league. I've had people tell me, gosh, I wish I would have listened to you because, you finished first in 2 leagues and third in another, and I'm not listening to your podcast and I'm finishing last in my league. I can't make you listen to us.
Yeah.
And I agree with the guy who says it's part luck, because it is part luck. I do not consider myself to be smarter than everyone out there in fantasy football. Some of it's luck. Some of it is understanding how, the situation for how your league is set up. Drafting accordingly. I was always in the 16-team league. I was always the guy who took 3 running backs before anyone else did, in spite of someone taking 2 of the top 5 wide receivers. That doesn't matter to me because there are so many wide receivers to choose from. There's a select pool of how many people are going to play on a weekly basis and get you points from the running back position. So it all of that comes into play. So,
a little bit of luck, doing your research and just experience. I mean, in your case, you've been doing it longer than I've been alive.
Yep.
So, not to date you or anything.
I'm not looking to date you either.
Yeah, both married. So. But yeah, I mean, like, experience too. I mean, if you're new to it, you're probably not going to be good right away. It's going to take some time.
One of the things.
What is this? Year 14 or something crazy like that.
And you struggle every once in a while.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, hard out on the sleeve. Most years I finish in the bottom half of the league in my main, redraft league that I've been with all my buddies since the beginning. Last season I finished second or third or something, so I had a good season that year, but that was, I hit on, I took Jalen Hurts in the third when he was the number 1 that year.
Yep.
Hit on a bunch of, Diggs actually being the top, one of the top, and then Devontae, I went Diggs and Devontae right off the bat last year. So, again, draft and a little bit of luck, you hit on some of those guys, and so
Puka.
Yeah.
Kyron Williams.
Staying active on the waivers and free agency and paying attention during the season. Obviously, it's, unless you do hit on all of your picks and your team is just good right off the bat, you gotta make moves and improve positions where you can and try and work trades and stuff like that. So it just comes with time.
Yeah, how many times have you ever ended up with the same 14 or 16 players that you drafted?
I think across all time of all fantasy football, that percent, it's probably less than 1% of teams.
Right.
All time.
Right.
In fantasy football, where you would end up with the same exact team you left the draft with. Now,
don't get me wrong. We've got some cheap asses in our 30-plus year league who refuse to pick up players, even if they've got bye weeks and they're not going to be able to play stuff, which I think is wrong. But I never have the same team. In fact, I usually have, if we were to look at this, I drafted, I think I have maybe half of the guys that I drafted.
Same.
My starting quarterback was Daniel Jones. I picked Purdy in the 10th round or whatever, 10th round? Yeah, 10th round, because I needed a backup quarterback. Yeah. They were like this, they were neck and neck as far as, who holds more value, but obviously it turned out great for me. But you think about, how many injuries and how many guys that, I drafted Marvin Mims thinking that he was going to have a breakout season. Yeah. The guy is faster than all get out, but it hasn't translated into being a viable wide receiver.
Unless you hit on those like 3 weeks where he had the one, 2 catches for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Right.
But yeah, yeah.
And I don't think I was playing him
No,
at that time
yeah.
because I was only 1D, 1 kicker, and probably 1 tight end and 5 running backs and 4 wide receivers. Just the way you do it.
Yep.
So don't think that you can't win.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like you said, some of the tried and true things that I've been doing for over 3 decades can certainly help you in thinking about how you determine how you go about drafting.
Yeah.
Why would you always take 3 running backs? Well, if I've got 3 starting running backs partway through the year, I can trade one of those guys and a decent wide receiver for one of the top 2 or 3 wide receivers.
Correct.
So,
Yeah.
you just, and this year it didn't work because of injuries. And, it's kind of like Gainwell starting as the starting running back
And then
in
Swift
Philly.
coming in. Yep.
And then all of a sudden Swift took over and it was all over.
Yeah.
So, it's all, you take chances, you hope that things turn out right. They don't always, but
Yeah.
you keep listening to the people and reading articles and
Yeah.
trying to find ways to get better, and hopefully you can win.
Yeah. For sure.
So that's all we've got.
Yep.
I am Ozzy.
And I'm Austin.
Have a great week.
See you later.